We welcome you to these realms of light from where your physical lives, your physical personalities, and your entire physical worlds also spring. As you arrive in this present moment here with us, you have been and are continuing to shift through many multiple parallel realities as you settle upon the course and the manner in which the transmission will take place, and also deciding as to which information will be passed through this gateway, and by extension, which information will be allowed to remain mysterious or perhaps revealed at other portions of your adventure and physical time-space reality. For everything here is strung out, as it were, across multiple frames, as in the film strip, whereas in other portions of your consciousness, you perceive each of the frames simultaneously. Thusly, you have the experience in non-simultaneous time and space to chart the course, as it were, through yourself. For you are travelers and you're traveling through yourselves. Thusly, the reality that you perceive around yourself is the crystallization of yourself. As you pass through yourself, frame by frame, facet by facet, you have, as you know, multiplicities of choices at each moment point. And there are many, many moment points, even within 1 second of your physical time. So you are making these constant choices and adjustments as you shift through versions of yourself and versions of Earth. And you are thusly navigating through yourselves. You are the path. And you have a multitude of paths through yourself, for there are many versions of yourself, both in what you might call the past and what you might refer to as the future from your current vantage point. Now you are shifting to a reality collectively and individually, whereby you will be anchoring your trajectory more on the future selves that you are, rather than the past selves that you have experienced yourselves to be, as you create your sense of continuity through yourself. So you are, in that sense, allowing the future versions of you to pull you forward. It would be as if the flower is encouraging the bulb to open, for it is demonstrating its full capacity, and yet as the bulb opens, it still has choice at every frame and every moment to choose to develop in its own unique way. For there is always free will and free choice, and yet all exist simultaneously. Each frame already exists. So that is the paradox of creation, that you're charting a course through yourself, even while all of yourself exists simultaneously at the same time, as it were. Now you are entering this period of your fall time, your autumn. You have passed through the equinox and are now heading into what you will call your holiday season. But we wish to speak now of those particular time markers that you've set about for yourself, that you know to be as Halloween, as All Souls Day, All Saints Day. These are very important markers in your culture, even though they are not necessarily seen as the most important holiday at this day and time. However, they do mark a very important experience, even if that memory is nearly lost in your annals of time. It has been re-emerging into your consciousness very powerfully in the recent decades. And we refer now to the ancient civilization that you have come to know as Atlantis. For as some of you do know already, and some of you have inklings, that this time period is in some sense a very ancient memory of the loss of that great civilization. And so as you move through this period, you are on a primarily unconscious way remembering all the, and we will use your colloquial language now, the souls that were lost during that time. of great transformation upon your planet. Now, it is no accident that this transmission is labeled number 13, because 13 is the number of transformation. I wish now to speak of the transformation that will relate to the completion of a great arc that has begun even long before your Atlantean times. But speaking of the earth itself, narrowing down our frame of reference, you will recognize that that story, the myth, and the history of Atlantis refers to a kind of downward spiral, a kind of loss of integrity, social integrity, a kind of fragmentation and loss of great knowledge and wisdom. And you are on the other side of this arc now, whereby you are re-experiencing some of those ancient lessons as they bubble from the subconscious to the conscious, as you move through this age of transformation. And you are indeed then revisiting some of those old lessons, but now from the arc of remembering, whereas previously the lessons were centered around forgetting, splitting, and segregating. Now you are in the age whereby at least a handful of you, some of you, will choose the integrative frequencies and ascend into fourth density, completing a very powerful arc of transformation, the story of which we refer to as but a mere fragment within a much larger arc. And so you are nearing these completion phases, and this is why everything has been so strewn about on the table for you to look at. All these ancient lessons are coming up now, fast and furious, as you pass through the eye of the needle, because you are completing that arc, that ancient arc. And so you will see the echo of the commemoration of the loss of that great civilization within these holidays that you have coming up before you. And it is a great synchronicity that your holiday that commemorates the return to light, which has amalgamated with the Christian holiday of Christmas, and various holidays of returning to light, which were the ancient pagan ways amalgamating with the modern religions. You have this idea of return to the light in your winter solstice. So you have this sandwiching of holidays together, very closely together, whereby you have the celebration of loss or commemoration of loss, the celebration of the souls themselves, while kind of mourning almost, as fall and autumn relate to a season of mourning in a way, even as is exemplified in your Chinese medicine, the idea of sadness and grief being related to autumn. And yet, soon after, you have this great holiday of returning to the light, whether you see it from the ancient ways or from more modern religious ways, the idea of returning to light. So this is the theme you are experiencing at this time. Now, the idea of Halloween in your Western culture has in a large way been distorted. Of course, it has been made playful and made fun for the children, and this is all well and good. But at the same time, you have many distortions as to the nature of spirit, the nature of soul, the nature of extra-dimensional consciousness. And so there has been a lot of fear because of this great loss and the loss of wisdom, and this perceived veil that seems to have dropped over humanity while these teachings were kept alive in many cultures. In the mystery schools, the vast majority have slowly and surely descended into a kind of third density darkness. And so there is the sense of loss of that, as well as the veil comes down thick and heavy. However, realize that from a soul perspective, you have been giving yourselves the opportunity to experience that very density. So on the grand arc, within the fifth dimension and beyond, this has all been orchestrated And yet the experience of it is a sense of great loss from within the matrix once you enter into it. And so your Halloween is rife with many distortions, a kind of spookiness as to the nature of spirit, and yet it does commemorate this season within your human history. Now, somewhat closer to the original intentions of this time of commemoration and loss is the celebration known more as the Day of the Dead, whereby there is more of a sense of connecting to the ancestors, for that is the original intention of this time, was to commemorate and remember those who have gone before in the great civilization that from your perspectives was lost, and the souls that were lost because of the veil that has begun to come over humanity. And even some of the symbols within that framework. You have the symbol of the marigold, which represents a kind of connection to the ancestral spirits. This was not in exactly the same form, but in a very, very similar form. A cousin, if you will, or a very similar species of flower was very prevalent in the Atlantean area and was very much honored and thought of as a kind of symbolic flower that represented the area because of its proliferation therein. And so it was something that was remembered with the great loss as a kind of symbol to remember those people that have gone before, that were in that civilization that was lost. So that symbol even comes down to you through the ages to remember those ancestors, those ancestor spirits. Now, many of you that are alive now are indeed what you would colloquially say reincarnations of those ancestors. Although truthfully, as you know, in fifth dimensionality, as we began this discussion, was the idea that the time or the experience of time is timelessness. And so everything is here and now. And so ultimately there is no loss because everything is happening simultaneously. There is only now, only here and now. And so you can consider those as, in some cases, extensions of the same oversoul, experiencing both the descent into darkness and the ascension into light in the current modern time frame, so that you can have that balanced perspective of the great undoing and then the great mending, all in through the perspective of one oversoul. Now, some of you are also making connections to ancient persons to draw from their experience and their lessons and their great losses and tribulations through that time period. Now, for this reason, many of you are in your current time frame re-experiencing the same frequencies and energies that were very much present at the time that led up to that final destruction. The frequencies and energies that were very much derived from a sense of separateness from one another, a sense of suspicion of one another, as well as a sense of cynicism as to the nature of the state or the civilization itself. And so these divisions have grown and perpetuated, and they are now mirrored in your current time frame in the Americas and in the world at large. Or in the manner of speaking, many of the souls that are revisiting this have been congregating, shall we say, in your current country, which is why this transmission is relevant for those of you that are living in the North American continent and specifically the United States. But it is also relevant for the entire world, for those lessons of divisions and separations are playing out on a not only national scale, but on an international level. And so now you have the opportunity, as all these frequencies are brought to the surface, to look at the way that you separate yourselves from the state, from that which you consider to be government, from that which you consider to be the society, the civilization. And so these ideas of working through this very specific frequency of personal freedom versus being in alignment with the collective, these are ancient lessons that are now coming to the surface, as well as these fragmentations, this idea that you are separate from the civilization that you live in, that you're separate from the planet that you live on, that you're separate from the governance, that you're separate from even yourselves and from one another. So you're learning these ancient lessons from a new perspective, from the perspective of bringing things back together. Whereas in that civilization, in the Atlantean civilization, you witnessed for many generations the breakdown of social structure, the spread of a variety of conspiracies, conspiracy theories, the spread of suspicion, such that the harmonization was fragmented into many individual parts, and those parts then not harmonizing with one another, but rather splitting and separating, such that the very fabric of that civilization was torn apart, and to such a degree that they attracted to themselves the various climactic changes and asteroidal impacts that eventually destroyed that civilization. Now, it is no surprise that the theme of climate change and the theme of rebalancing yourselves with one another, with the planet itself, is such a powerful lesson and topic of today, because you are re-examining that relationship you have with one another, with the planet, with your governance, with the state, with the civilization. You are reassessing those bonds of connection and finding how to have the personal individual freedom while at the same time being a harmonious, cohesive civilization. For we tell you, indeed, these are not in direct opposites to one another. They are indeed one and the same. For each unique puzzle piece that you are fits into the grand puzzle and the grand orchestration. And this is what you are learning as a civilization, as a shift from third to fourth density. Now, it is very wise to investigate levels of suspicion and feeling disempowered, because these are frequencies that are longing to be transformed so that you can move through the portal of transformation to the fourth density civilization, whereby both personal freedom and integration are honored and work cohesively as two sides of the same coin. Whereas now you are addressing this seeming dichotomy within your belief matrices, whereby personal freedom seems to be at odds with the greater civilization, or the greater civilization seems at odds with your personal freedom. So there's this polarity, this splitting that you are reintegrating back. So as you move about your day, be very mindful of not only the information that you plug into, which represents a frequency, but be aware of the frequency. Be aware if it's coming from a fear-based reality system. Be aware if it's increasing your sense of separation from one another, if it's creating a sense of alienation between you and the state, between you and the country, between you and the civilization, between you and the world, between you and the environment, for even seemingly innocuous transmissions of information about natural disasters. Be very mindful, even those, how they are spun. Does it seem like these events are happening seemingly randomly and without any kind of orchestration? Does it make you feel disempowered as you listen to these, that you could be next, for example? So all of these coming from all sides is whether, regardless of what side the information comes from, if you're choosing sides from either end of the polarity, as it were, be mindful of the frequency from which it operates, from fear or from love, from integration or from separation, segregation. And this is the time to begin to understand and remember, not just intellectually, but truly, that you do create your reality. Thusly, this idea of separation is really nonsensical in the fourth density, for you are your government, you are your path, you are your life, you are your environment, you are nature itself. Thusly, anything that makes you suspicious of nature, that makes you suspicious of your fellow beings, that makes you suspicious of the state, the government, in a sense, you are becoming suspicious of portions of yourself, because there are uninvestigated negative beliefs therein, lurking in the shadows, as it were. And so you have the sense of suspicion that you will create for yourself a reality that you do not prefer. And then you project it outward onto people, onto nature, onto governments, onto other nations, onto your own nation. But ultimately it is projected from within yourself on portions of yourself. So as you begin to take ownership and take stock of these various negative beliefs, you will find an incredible freedom awakening within each and every one of you, and a sense of being the sovereign being of your own reality and moving through your reality frame by frame with a sense of confidence that everything that is orchestrated is there for your behalf, on your behalf, and for your growth and edification and ultimate self-realization. So we wish very much for the transmission of this information that can aid and assist you in healing these splits between you and yourselves, between you and one another, between you and your communities, between you and your civilizations, between you and your governments, between you and your other nations, and between you and nature, especially. It is no accident now that your United Nations has planned a summit on the climate change beginning on your October 31st. The timing is quite synchronous, even though at a cursory level you might not recognize the interlinking and the synchronicity at play. You are rehashing those old Atlantean lessons in a new light, with the great capacity and momentum for integration to complete our arc of transformation. And as you do so, you'll find that there is increasing personal freedom for each being to express themselves in their most unique way. Therefore, you will be breaking down, and you have been breaking down, the ideas of how you are, quote unquote, supposed to behave based upon family lines, national lines, racial lines, gender lines. All these divisions are becoming arbitrary, and there are many factions within your civilization that would seek to conserve the old ways. However, the momentum now is towards integration and towards the blurring of these lines and towards the personal freedom to express oneself in any way, regardless of gender or race or family or nationality or being born in this place or that place. You are learning to treat each other as individual souls rather than the packaging that you come in, be you male or female or this race or that race. You are moving towards that deep sense of integration and personal freedom that is a great value within your civilization. The personal freedom to be oneself and not to conform to any particular standards, shall we say. Now, there are, of course, fractions within your civilizations that would seek to conserve the old third density ways in your institutions. And these too will change, and change from the inside out. For when the individuals change, so too the institutions change to reflect the individuals. So while it might seem like a monumental task, we assure you that as each and every one of you changes, so does everything change. It would be accurate to say you are shifting to the version of Earth whereby the institutions will reflect the change that you've made within yourself. So it makes no sense to point fingers outside and say it's going this way and that way and not to my preference, because ultimately you can only change yourselves. And as you change yourselves, so too will you find yourself shifting to versions of Earth whereby the reflective mirror will show you, will demonstrate to you the change that you have made within yourself. And you are indeed shifting towards a more harmonious, more integrated civilization. And the purging of all these negative beliefs, this period of detoxification can be quite intense. And while you are given the free will and the freedom to choose to shift to a version of Earth that does not make it, as it were, or repeats the cycle of destruction, you do have incredible freedom to choose to shift to that version of Earth that moves into fourth density, that becomes a galactic number. For when you integrate yourselves as humanity, so too will you ascend to become parts of much vaster organizations and interacting with civilizations of an extra-dimensional as well as even extraterrestrial nature. And in fact, there is much help that can be given to your world, but these extra-dimensional energies and extraterrestrial civilizations cannot come in and do your homework for you, as it were. So you must begin with yourselves and begin to shape the world into an image of yourselves as transcended beings. So too will then you attract help from civilizations that have made this leap of transformation to fourth density. So we will have more to say about the various forces at play within your civilization. However, we feel we have perhaps given an earful already, even while several other topics remain. Perhaps we will explore them at another time. So we will at this time open it up to any questions. And if you have muted yourselves, remember to unmute your technology while you ask the question.
I have a question.
Very good.
Gee, Ely, you said so much in your transmission today, I don't know where to start. Knowing that I create my own reality and my reality alone, I found it interesting how you spoke a lot about the collective, and I would like to know more about the individual and their participation in the events around us. I find myself becoming more disharmony with the world about me. And I have drawn on my background with Seth, and I think now you also, to know that I can look to a future version of myself, and by locking on to that future version of myself, I can pull myself to that version.
Yes.
So I have been doing that lately, and it's just been amazing. I have found that because I create my own reality, I can pick my reality, but I need to pick it wisely if I'm going to pick it at all. And by picking my reality, it seems to mean that I am not confident in where my reality is going to go naturally, and I seem to be at a conflict. So is that what you were talking about as far as projecting yourself into the future? Because I kind of live my own life and have my own way of thinking. And I really, if it doesn't integrate with what's around me, I really don't care because it's my own journey. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, you are picking your reality in a manner of speaking every moment. It is not so much to learn how to pick, it is to realize that you are doing it. And then, as you said, to do it more consciously, because you are doing it all the time, so subconsciously and so seamlessly that it appears as if a reality manifests before you. But you are moving into that phase where you are becoming more lucid. And even as you recognize that in a lucid dream, you are creating the dream events. So too are you recognizing that you are creating the world events all around you to reflect to you a process that is happening within yourself. And so it is all about becoming increasingly conscious of the realities that you choose. And so as you have been working with the symbol of flow, the ability to flow through life, this is a kind of grace and ease and lightness that we are speaking of, where when you really tap into your true natural self, you can allow that energy to flow through you unimpeded. And if you do notice it impeded, then that is part of the flow too, because the impedance is there being revealed to let you know that this is the next untethering or loosening that can take place to increase the very flow that is being restricted. So it is a self-reinforcing, but also self-reflective mirror that will bring to you everything that you need to continue to increase the flow. So using those moments when you feel constrained in a positive way is very beneficial. And this is how you become conscious of that which has largely been an unconscious process in the third density state. Now, if there is a specific question you would like to ask, we can comment. One thing is, as you begin to really channel this higher dimensional frequency from your higher mind, you may at times find yourself slightly kind of wobbling a little bit out of phase with the collective, because there is a period where you kind of disorient yourself so that you can reorient yourself in a new way. As you shift vibrations, you can get a little disoriented. Some of you will feel a little bit under the weather, perhaps. Others of you will feel a little out of step. And so during those times, understand that as you shift into neutral, you might have this kind of disengaging feeling wash over you in a variety of ways. And then you will re-engage at a much higher frequency level with the collective. And it will no longer be the same collective, because you have shifted to a new version of you, and therefore also a new version of Earth that will reflect the frequency that you're in. And so you will re-engage, but you won't be re-engaging with the same collective because you have shifted. So perhaps that sheds some light, or is there other clarifications?
I have another question. When I when I reach out to a future version of myself to get the electromagnetic charge to draw myself to that version, is that really accurate, or is my future version of myself really just reaching back to me and getting my attention, saying, no, 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 this way, come this way?
Well, there are an infinite variety of future versions of you, and each of them, in a manner of speaking, broadcasts a signal. And so it is up to you to lock in on any particular signal that is being given and use that as a manner of speaking to pull you forward. That information is being broadcast, as it were, colloquially speaking, metaphorically speaking, from each version of you that is a future self, but also each version of you that is a past self. And so you are learning to shift to receive more of your information from those that are upstream from you, or upline, as it were, as another channel likes to say. But the idea of receiving information from those future versions of you. Now that information is freely available, and you can develop a kind of harmonic resonance with a certain future version of you, whereby you start to kind of vibrate together and exchange information in a very empathic way, where you fall into a kind of lockstep synchronization. And you can even begin to channel that future version of you into varieties of creative acts. And so it's more of a kind of a resonance, like two tuning forks vibrating together, because you are shifting your frequency into that future self's frequency range. And so that future self's perceptions become available to you because you are perceiving the frequency on the same frequency, shall we say. And so there is natural resonance and transmission or vibration shared. And so you can have glimpses of future versions of yourself that way, or receive inspirations from that future version that translate through your current physical mind into creative acts. One might, for example, write a story of a future version of themselves, not realizing they are pulling it directly from a future version of themselves, and simply couching it in terms of various characters that they identify with and create a story. So there's a translation sometimes of this information. And sometimes it is more direct contact, where you get glimpses of future events and future possibilities, probabilities, but they will always remain probabilities. But if you stay in resonance with that version of you, you are charting that trajectory through yourself to a version of yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense to me. Not only that, it's the future versions, the past versions. I seem to be in a synchronicity vibration. It's like they're all stepping stones on the same stream.
Yes. And you can, from your current version, reach to the so-called past versions. And rather than being influenced by their somewhat limited perspectives, influence them through your vibration and love and support to shift themselves out of that old density in their time frame, as it were. So as your future self can send you information, so can you send information to your past selves. And you do this all the time in your dream states. You're simply becoming aware that physical reality is another dream, thereby these rules are becoming more readily available. These mobilities of consciousness are becoming more available in your waking reality, so that your waking reality is becoming more dreamlike. And so you will be moving through your day, even while you're on a very physical timeline. At the same time, you will also be experiencing multiple timelines and other versions of you from the past and the future. But we encourage you then to see yourself as offering aid and assistance to your past selves, rather than being limited by the limited scope of information that was available to your past selves. So the influence will go from here to there rather than from there to here, if that makes sense, using your colloquial language.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I do that consciously now, reach back to a previous self.
Yeah.
I try to remember that when I'm reaching forward also. And I also try to remember when I'm reaching forward, that when I do get to that forward position, to remember to reach back, because somehow it's the synchronicity of it all.
Yes.
I call them Easter eggs. I like to hide Easter eggs in the timeline.
Right. Yes, it is a bit like, the analogy comes to mind, bootstrapping yourself upwards. Does that even make sense? But that idea of future versions of you pulling you forward, you allowing yourselves to be pulled forward by your locking in on their frequency, but also offering. Now, within your psychological field, there has been much development in your recent decades. Your internal family systems is very much about being the present self and reaching, quote unquote, back into the past to bring healing to these portions of the personality that are resonating in past time frames where various situations took place. So this is becoming very much modern practice. It is no longer the airy-fairy realm, or no longer the mystical realm alone, but it is spilling its way into your storytelling as well. Your Hollywood, if you notice, has been very much offering you stories of connecting the spirit, connecting to other versions of yourself, parallel realities, in a large way, your Hollywood functions as a kind of storytelling, as the ancient storytellers of old existed. So to do stories get told now that pull you forward into fourth density, and they are simply being told through your modern media as opposed to the ancient ways of old. But that is a sidebar, as it were. Have we answered your question, or do you have?
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions out there?
I have a question about this time of the year, the Halloween time of the year, the fall part of the year.
Yes.
I've heard many times that this time of the year, it's when the veil between worlds is the thinnest.
Yes.
Is that something that's accurate? And could you tell me a little more about that?
It is a time that you have as a culture, as a civilization, set up for yourselves to commemorate the ancestors, as it were, to commemorate those who have gone before you, in some frames of reference to celebrate those that have gone before you, and other frames of reference to mourn those that have been quote unquote lost because the veils have been so thick. But you have given yourselves a kind of cultural permission slip to thin the veils yourselves. For remember, you are the ones who are orchestrating the veil that you speak of. And you have created these veils as a mode and method, or a creative constraint of learning the lessons that you came here to learn. So these veils are not imposed upon you. They are reinforced by you, in fact, by the nature of the theme you came to explore within this world. And many of those themes collectively have agreed upon this period as being that which represents the thinning of the veils, as you say. Now, as we spoke of some of those original seeds or the beginnings, if you speak of beginnings, does harken back to the ancient Atlantean times, specifically the loss, colloquially speaking, of that civilization. But it has been carried forward and has gone through many changes and amalgamations as this spills through the times and traverses through different cultural periods and from culture to culture. And yet that theme of the thinning of the veils and this idea of commemorating the spirits of the dead, specifically in your Dia de los Muertos version of the event, and also the Christian version, the All Souls Day, All Saints Day, all of these various overlays are coming because these ideas are being recycled again and again. Even new religions come along, they pick up and recycle some of these ancient archetypal energies, as you see in your most modern religions, in the recycling of many pagan symbology. Because these are archetypal energies that are part of the themes of exploration, and you give yourselves the opportunities to mark these periods in your cyclical time frame. And so it appears as if you're on a circle, but actually if you expand dimensionality from 2D to 3D, you'll see that the circle is actually a spiral, and you're spiraling upwards, but still using these time periods, these markers, as it were, to revisit certain themes throughout the year. So yes, shortly, yes, it is the thinning of the veils. However, it is the thinning of the veils that you yourselves have orchestrated within your themes. Does that help?
Thank you.
Very good. Are there any other questions? So we have begun to speak a little bit of the nature of storytelling, the way it has become your, in large part, your entertainment media. And that there has been the infusion within the last several decades of many new models of being that have broken down some of the old barriers, shall we say. So through your entertainment comes much of the fourth density possibilities that are then spread en masse to your civilization through the art of storytelling. And so you see these characters on the screen playing out, and in a manner of speaking, instilling new values, but truly they are actually reflective in nature. That which you see on the screens is really reflective of a transformation that you have undergone within yourselves, and then have projected into story format, and then fed it back into your physical minds as a kind of reinforcing mechanism. Now, in some circles, this is perceived as a kind of threatening situation, because it is shaking to the core many foundational beliefs about the nature of the roles that you are designed to play within your civilization. And so many of these storytelling enterprises have been seen in a very negative light, because they are bringing in a new reality that is disrupting the old ways. And so there is sometimes a tendency to, from that disempowered state, to label it in very negative ways. And so just have an awareness of that, for there are many projections and counter projections, and we will expound upon this in another transmission, where we do speak of the various projections that are occurring within your civilization. For there is in the third density still much finger pointing and blaming of always outside forces, when ultimately the one force of nature that you're dealing with is the very transformation of your civilization from darkness to light. And so much is being revealed now to the surface, not only of the negativities, but also you see through your storytelling the introduction or the revelation of new modes of behavior, new characterizations, new possibilities for the collective. And so we encourage you to look at all this with a very neutral mind frame and see it for what it is. And we will speak more on this in another transmission, for we have already spoken much in terms of the particular season that you're passing through now, the season of Halloween, All Souls and All Saints Day, and the Dia de los Muertos. So we will then allow ourselves to shift to a closing meditation, whereby we can allow these transmissions to settle into your beingness. For these transmissions occur not only verbally, but also vibrationally. And admittedly, we are stretching the channel a bit. And kinda moving him just right up to his full capacity. So let us take these moments to come back into center, to come back into the state of presence. And in that state of presence, to integrate the vibrational quality of that which has been given, which has been transmitted through a variety of means other than the verbal one. And we wish to thank each and every one of you that is here, and each and every one of you that listens to this recorded transmission at another time. We thank you for being here to help anchor these vibrations, for it is your receptivity that helps to bring these frequencies down to earth, as it were. It is your question and your desire for this knowledge that helps to pull it through the channel, and indeed through yourselves, to have this co-creative experience. So you are very powerfully anchoring these vibrations into your civilization. And in doing so, shifting to versions of Earth that will reflect the nature of the transmission that has been given as you shift to fourth density. We wish each and every one of you to have a beautiful, lovely, and a fond good day. Well, all right. That was an earful.
You are a wealth of information.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been building up for a month, you know what I mean? Because we didn't do a channeling session in between. But I also felt stretched to my capacity, and also like the personality would just not allow certain things to come through. You know what I mean? So it's like
Ely said he was stretching you to your limit.
And I felt that. It's because it's just like the meter went all the way to 100%, and it's just like there's more, but it's just like and here's your limitation. And it's funny because that was, I do remember that being mentioned, right? Is that as you increase the flow, so too will it reveal where you're still constraining. So that'll be an interesting next few days.